Bank fears go global as Credit Suisse borrows $54 billion. U.S. releases footage of drone downed by Russia. Black children's COVID death rate higher than white kids. UK Muslims had difficulty accessing healthcare in pandemic. Imran Khan greets supporters who blocked his arrest. 12 years later, Syrians still call for freedom. Mainstream retailers feature Ramadan goods. Brisk walking 11 minutes daily slashes risk of premature death. From our Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana, Siddiqui. Our top story tonight. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen attempted to assure nervous Americans that the country's banking system remains sound and that their savings are safe. This was in the wake of Swiss banking giant Credit Suisse announcing this week that its auditor identified material weakness in its financial reporting. The volatility in the banking system, stocks and bonds, renewed worries about the financial system, according to the New York Times. Credit Suisse borrowed $54 billion as Ammar al-Khudairi, chairman of the Saudi National Bank, which is the Swiss bank's top shareholder, said everything is fine. In related news, new questions are being raised about Goldman Sachs' work with Silicon Valley Bank, which was taken over by the federal government last week. Republican Senator Mike Crapo, the lead author of a 2018 bank deregulation law, insisted that there is no need to impose more strict rules. Deregulations made during former President Donald Trump's term in office are being blamed for weakening key guardrails designed to prevent another financial crisis. U.S. European Command released footage of a Russian Su-27 aircraft conducting an intercept of a U.S. Air Force MQ-9. The incident took place in international airspace over the Black Sea on March 14th. The White House said Wednesday that the U.S. may never recover the drone that crash-landed. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said during an interview with CNN that the Reaper fell in very deep water. Retailers across the United States are stocking their shelves with Ramadan-themed products in a bid to gain their share of a growing consumer market. According to the Pew Research Center, American Muslim households have $170 to $200 billion in spending power. Target has developed a new Ramadan and Eid holiday collection that includes 2 new children's books from Muslim authors recently. Party City has also been selling Ramadan-themed tableware and decorations. Apart from Ramadan, Eid, and other minority religious holidays are starting to become included in mainstream stores and spaces. Ramadan this year is set to begin on March 22nd. Nearly 400 immigration, justice, and other advocacy groups on Wednesday added their voices to the call for President Joe Biden to reject family detention. It came amid reports that the White House is considering a revival of the practice that was used during the Trump and Obama administrations. The policy subjected thousands of families to numerous abuses and trauma. The ACLU, Bend the Arc, and the National Immigration Law Center were among 383 groups that sent a letter to Biden Wednesday morning. No version of family detention, whether referred to as a detention facility, short-term processing center, emergency family staging center, or by any other name, is acceptable, the group said. They asked the president to keep the pledge he made when he took office in 2021 to end family detention and to pursue just, compassionate, and humane immigration policies. A team led by researchers at the University of Cambridge has found that walking 11 minutes a day or 75 minutes a week can significantly cut your risk of premature death by almost a quarter. The study found that this amount of walking was enough to reduce the risk of heart disease and stroke, as well as a number of cancers. Stroke and heart disease are the leading causes of death around the world. The team's finding is based on data analysis of 30 million participants from 94 large longitudinal studies. Researchers found that 2 out of 3 people reported activity levels below 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity activity. That is the amount recommended by the UK's National Health Service. Dr. Soren Braga, lead author of the study, said that if you find that 75 minutes a week is manageable, then you could try stepping it up gradually to the recommended full 150 minutes. Religious leaders from several faith traditions joined together at the Boone County Commission Chamber in Columbia, Missouri, to support their Muslim neighbors. This was an observation of the first International Day to Combat Islamophobia on March 15th. Dr. Shakir Hamoudi is outreach leader at the Islamic Center of Central Missouri. He said that twice a dead animal was put at the footsteps of his center's door. Hamoudi said he urges the community and leaders to recognize March 15th as a day to combat Islamophobia and bring the community together. International Day to Combat Islamophobia is observed in 140 countries worldwide. It is held in honor of the 51 people killed by a white supremacist at 2 mosques in New Zealand in 2019. We're bringing more news stories after the break, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. The COVID death rate among African American children was 2.7 times higher than among white children, according to a 2-year study from the Morehouse School of Medicine in Atlanta. Researchers also found that Black and Hispanic children also required hospitalization at greater rates than white kids. Experts have noted disparities in health and access to care among different racial and ethnic groups, along with issues like discrimination and poverty. The study highlights how children can suffer as a result of these stark differences. The survey was commissioned by the Black Coalition Against COVID, a nationwide health advocacy group. Meanwhile, over 400 Americans died of COVID on Wednesday. British Muslims struggled to access palliative and end-of-life care during the COVID-19 pandemic. That's according to a report by the Muslim Council of Britain, end-of-life charity Marie Curie, the University of Leeds, and the University College of London. The survey found that the pandemic made pre-existing inequalities in healthcare worse. It also disproportionately affected the health of people from most minority groups in the UK. Zahra Muhammad is Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Britain. She said the report highlights the deep-seated nature of health inequalities and their particular prevalence within British Muslim communities. Among the recommendations for improving care are providing culturally appropriate services and better support for family and caregivers of people with palliative care needs. The New York-based Center for Constitutional Rights on Wednesday renewed its call for reparations for Iraq. This weekend marks the 20th anniversary of the George W. Bush administration's illegal invasion of Iraq. The center, which has been working with Iraqi civil society groups and U.S. service members, has been demanding redress for the last 10 years. It says the illegal invasion of Iraq killed hundreds of thousands, left some 2 million Iraqis disabled, and 9 million displaced. It also caused environmental devastation. Meanwhile, the Costs of War project at Brown University estimates that the total cost of the war in Iraq and Syria will exceed 500,000 human lives and $2.89 trillion by 2050. The project also said that an estimated 300,000 people have died from direct war violence in Iraq. On the 12th anniversary of the start of peaceful protests against the regime of Bashar al-Assad in northern Syria, demonstrations were held. It started 12 years ago when a group of elementary school students wrote, "Doctor, it's your turn now," on a school wall. This was referring to the regime of President Bashar al-Assad, who is a doctor by training. It was calling for him to be pushed out, as other dictators in the Arab world were at that time. In Idlib province and the districts of Bab, Azaz, and Tel Abyad, which are still under opposition control in the north of the country, people gathered to commemorate the anniversary of the start of peaceful protests. Demonstrators chanted, "The killer Assad regime must be held accountable. We want the regime to fall, and we want forcibly displaced civilians to return to their homes." What began as a peaceful protest turned into an armed resistance as the Assad regime began bombing protesters. This led to armed resistance, which then turned into a conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran, as well as Russians and Americans, all of whom have been involved in bombing campaigns. More than 230,000 Syrians have been killed and over 13 million displaced since 2011, the Syrian Network for Human Rights said on Wednesday.
Snow can be fun and delightful for some people, but it is not for these displaced kids in Iraq and Syria. Winter with its snow, rain, and muddy conditions are taking down their clumsy tents. These camps have been their homes for years now. They fled torture, bombs, sectarian wars, superpowers, and ISIS. Daily temperature averages less than 10 degrees Celsius, while there is no heat available. Social media show the challenges that they face. While living in these camps is impossible, now freezing weather is bringing them death. According to the UN, there are 1.4 million internally displaced persons in Iraq by the end of 2019. These displaced are suffering from trauma and psychological stress. They also face the threat of eviction while they have no home to go to. hope. In Dhiqar city, for example, Shia Muslims donated blankets and clothes to the displaced Sunni, neighbors helping neighbors. But Syria is even worse. In Syria, there are more than 13 million people that have been displaced since 2011. 6.2 million displaced within Syria, and this includes 2.5 million children. This number is the biggest internally displaced population in the world.
يعني إذا بتستمر العاصفة يومين ثلاثة رح يكون الوضع أسوأ بكثير. هاي الخيام مثل ما أنتم شايفين كلها وقعت على الأهالي. يعني اليوم ألف يا ويلة لحتى نزلنا على عزاز حصلنا ربطين خبز قوت اليوم. بعد استمرت العاصفة يومين ثلاثة أو أكثر الله العليم إيش بيصير بهالعالم.
أخيكم يعني ساعدونا والله العظيم متنا من البرد ليكوا هالثلج. لكن طعنا من البرد لا حدا تجيب لنا بارقين لا حدا تجيب لنا فحم لك لا تجيبوا لنا شيء نسيانين طاوع بقول لكم بالمخيم ما حدا عتجيب لنا شيء.
They are all at risk. They escape death from the war, but they face misery and death in the displacement camps.
The UN Special Rapporteur on Protecting Human Rights in Countering Terrorism warned of an alarming increase in intrusive and high-risk technologies. Fianualani Aulin said the technologies include drones, biometrics, artificial intelligence, and spyware in the global fight against terrorism. In her report to the UN Human Rights Council, she said these are being used without due regard for the rule of law, governance, and human rights. Aulin pointed to the impact on fundamental rights such as family life, freedom of movement, freedom of expression, freedom of peaceful assembly, and the right to privacy. The UN expert expressed concern about the growing domestication of the use of drones in several countries. She also called out the widespread misuse of spyware technology against civil society actors, dissidents, and journalists, and the global adoption of biometric data collection. Former Prime Minister of Pakistan Imran Khan today greeted his supporters who for 2 days resisted police trying to arrest him. The Lahore High Court ordered officers to suspend their operation. Imran Khan tweeted that he is ready to talk to anyone for the country's sake. Khan's remarks came a day after Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif extended an olive branch to the country's former leader. A Muslim Network interview with Imran Khan was cancelled on Tuesday as his internet was cut off. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.